Welcome to the next segment of Into the Abyss. My name is Kevin Lucia. I'm the author of Things Slip Through Me or Darkly, and my new book, Mystery Road, is up for order through Cemetery Dance Publications.
I'm C.W. Breyer, author of Whispers from the Depths.
Thomas McDonough, history teacher.
Tom's down there.
Yeah.
So.
It is the Brady Bunch.
Very much. So we were speaking about Dr. Sleep, and wanted to look back into The Shining and the influence that it has had. Obviously, the book and the movie have both had a huge impact on horror. It's highly read, highly watched, even to this day. Why do you think that is? Why has The Shining had such a long grasp on the horror community?
You want to go, Tom?
I think it's the ultimate haunted house movie. Granted, it's an entire hotel, but, I mean, and I'm putting this down more for King than, say, Stanley Kubrick, really tapping into people's deepest fears, especially little things like one room in particular of The Shining being haunted by that psychotic old lady who harms Danny. And there's other things as well, the former caretaker telling Jack to kill his family. And then they just throw all these other ones out there. They're just like throwing it all in there. And then you have the ambiance, well, it's not even a word, ambiance, more the atmosphere of being in this hotel that's shut down for the winter, so you have nowhere to go. And I think it kind of connects with a lot of people, because we all want to do the haunted house thing. But, I mean, that is really the top.
I think, again, not being necessarily a horror movie historian or anything like that, in many ways, the movie, to a lesser degree than the novel, I think, but the movie dealing with Jack's alcoholism, and his almost inevitable slide into it and how he's powerless to face it, I think that's going to be a story that's always going to be really powerful. Having to face those personal demons, and unfortunately, Jack is, utterly consumed by them. And I'd have to agree with Tom. I can admit to not being a super fan of the movie, if only because I love the novel so much. I'm actually, guilty admission, I actually like the TV series better than I like the movie, because I feel like that even with some of its 90s cheese, it captures Jack's struggle a lot more as an addict. But the original movie, the amount of tension is just ratcheted up really, really, really high, and it's just the atmosphere is dialed all the way to 11, and you can just feel it. It just kind of crackles.
Yep. I think part of it gets into certain properties will reach critical mass from the psyche, and so people recognize it because everyone else they know has watched it. And so I think Shining has been that one for horror. There's been a number of horror movies that have reached that point. So part of it's just self-sustaining energy. But I do love both the book and the movie. They're very different things, so I love them in a different way. They're telling a different story with different characters. Obviously, one's more of a personal demons, one's more of a haunted house story. And I enjoyed both of them in their own regards. But I also think it does exceptionally well, both as as you mentioned, as a haunted house movie, Tom. It is a great haunted house movie. It's one of the best, I think, dives into the struggle of a parent and the husband, kind of going through the pressures of life, but also the pressure of being that husband and father. It does a great job of telling it. I think that's why it's cemented itself, and so it was set up to be an enduring film because it tells a great story that way. I think it also was one of those movies, maybe starting with Rosemary's Baby, that during that early, like late 60s to 70s era, horror took a jump forward. It was more mature, it was more serious, it was very different than what it had been in the previous decades. Obviously the 80s took it in another direction, but I think that period, it took horror in a more serious direction, and so it was one of those birthplace films where it set up what horror can be for the coming decades.
Right. Okay. Tom, any additions for The Shining?
No, as I said, people should definitely watch it. It's one of those Saturday afternoon, wintry afternoons, you should watch it if you got nothing else going on, because it really helps you understand better horror, better casting, because let's be honest, most people, when they first saw this, they already thought of Shelley Duvall as Diane from Cheers, the snooty bar waitress, and then realized, oh wait, she has some depth and some pretty good acting as that frustrated mother and wife. And I really, as I said, people really need to expand their outlook.
I can say as my parting comment again, I've always liked the novel a little bit better, and I think Stephen King has even some objections. I think he once said in an interview the problem with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is that Stanley Kubrick doesn't believe in ghosts.
Right.
So how do you make
Yes.
a ghost movie when you don't believe in ghosts? But I would also recommend, in addition to watching the movie, maybe watch the movie first and then read The Shining. The Shining is one of those books, and I think maybe this is probably why the movie has such resonance too. The book has more resonance with me than the movie, because I read the book in college because I wanted this kind of Stephen King, just stretch where I just read everything. I kind of just blitzed my way through Stephen King, and I read The Shining in college, and my reaction was, "Oh wow, this is cool." I reread it again, and probably 20 some years later as an adult with kids, and I thought, my God, this is terrifying. The story of this guy and this is the part where the movie misses maybe a little bit, is that, and I will be honest, I've not watched the original Shining in a while, but my impressions of the original Shining was that Jack Torrance's character doesn't put up much of a struggle. He seems to kind of just, he kind of shows up and he already looks a little crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas in Jack
That's
Torrance,
Jack Nicholson.
right. So yeah,
That's
so
Jack Nicholson at his best.
it was, yeah. So in the novel, Jack Torrance is this deeply frustrated man who is also deeply guilty. He's deeply regretful for the way he's lived his life. He's in AA. He's trying really, really hard. Somewhere in the back of his head, he knows that taking his job at the Overlook is not a good idea, but it's the only choice they have, and he's desperately fighting to save his family, and he's losing.
Yep.
And that is the real, and that's why the novel, I thought a little bit less of that was translated into, and also one thing I think I could be wrong, and this is maybe my final comment, that was missed in the movie. This is why I like the TV series better. The TV series and the novel really touched on the inherited aspect of alcoholism, where that Jack's dad was an alcoholic, and Jack's dad abused him, and there was this one scene in the TV series where the radio speaker, like the little ham radio, starts speaking to Jack, and it's his dad, and he's saying, "You need to teach Danny the rules. You need to give him his medicine. That's what you need to do, boy." And you could see what was going on there, that this was a man that was buckling under not only his own desire to be good, but buckling under the weight of a father who had abused him the same way. And I can only imagine, not having been that way myself, I can only imagine the complicated, my dad abused me, part of me's scared of him, but you're a little kid, who do you want to be like?
Dad.
Your dad. So when you're a dad, who do you measure yourself up against? Your dad. And that was the part of the movie, the original movie with Jack Nicholson, that I think didn't come through as well. So yeah. Any final comments on The Shining?
Nope. I think
Okay.
you nailed it.
All right. I would definitely, as Tom said, it's a crucial piece of horror cinema. So I would highly recommend watching both the original Shining, watch the TV series The Shining, and then read The Shining as well.